Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Well, Wendy, we played in another haunted venue on Saturday night, and I still didn't see a ghost there.
I didn't either.
There was lots of spirits.
Yeah,
but
there were.
But no ghost.
Or maybe it was just being shy.
I think the ghost was being shy. No, but sometimes we've heard about, okay, so this is a bar we play at in Middleton, Wisconsin. And it's not even that old of a building. Is it that old of a building, you think?
Yeah, actually it is.
Oh, but then I am way off on it. How old is the building?
The restaurant part, at least, I know that's the oldest part. It's one of the oldest buildings in Middleton. It's over 100 years.
Okay, so the Club Tavern is over 100 years old. The building's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
But the ghost is not over 100 years old.
No, well, we don't think. If it's the person that people think it is.
Yeah, so the bar owner actually thinks that he knows the ghost and somebody who used to come in, hang out at the Club Tavern a lot and would even help clean up and stuff. And so sometimes you can still see him cleaning and brushing off the stage and stuff like that. Even when there's nobody there. And so we've had people say that they've seen it in the cameras and stuff. Like they'll see it in the camera and then they'll come out and be like, hey, you're drunk, get out of here or whatever. And then you realize they're just talking to us. So I always thought that was a fun story. And I'm always hoping to have some kind of paranormal experience on stage. But unfortunately this weekend, it was not for me.
Me neither. However, we did do a good job of blowing out our voices.
Yeah, we did. It was an all-night show. And it was really fun. It was -6 degrees, so the pack-up was a little tough. But otherwise, it was an awesome time in a haunted venue. And so we're always looking to play in more haunted venues.
Definitely.
So if you guys have any clubs in your town where you're looking for a little bit of rock and roll, paranormal style, we would love to bring it there. And then, we'll bring the K2s. We'll check it out.
And thanks to everyone who was at that show at Club Tavern, because it certainly was a very fun evening.
Yeah, it was a barn burner. So, okay. That was a lot of fun. And also, speaking of, and I don't know if these places are haunted, but we're going to try to make them haunted. So we're going to be in Southern California. Wendy and I are doing some acoustic duo action in Southern California coming up on Thursday, January 25th and Sunday, January 28th. Wendy, where are we going to be at?
On Thursday, we're going to be at McFadden's in Anaheim.
McFadden's.
Yes, we'll be in Anaheim for the NAMM conference. And if anybody else is going to be there, please look us up. We'd love to see you. But we'll be playing at McFadden's.
McFadden's right by Disneyland.
Thursday evening. And then Sunday evening, we will be at Silver Lake Lounge in Los Angeles. Excited to check that place out. Yeah.
So if you guys are in the LA area, come out and see us. We'll buy you a beer. Both shows are free. And then we're going to play our weird songs that we talk about on this podcast and stuff like that. Right. So it's Thursday, January 25th, right by Disneyland at McFadden's in Anaheim. And then Sunday, January 28th at Silver Lake Lounge. All right. So we had some music. We got some music coming up. Haunted locations. We're going to keep on looking for them. And the two people we have on the podcast today, they host like events where they do ghost hunting together at different locations around the East Coast.
That's fun. There's lots of those out there too.
Right, because that's all. So we even talk about it in the podcast because Stephanie discusses growing up in a house built in 1792. So that's exciting and fun.
Awesome.
And so you might have seen Scott Porter on Ghost Asylum or Haunted Towns on Destination America because he's part of the Tennessee Wraith Chasers.
Ooh.
And he's the historian for them, and he lets us know how the Wraith Chasers got together. And Stephanie Burke, you might have seen her on Kindred Spirits.
Yes.
With Adam Berry and Amy Bruni. And we met them at the convention in Michigan this year.
That's right. We sure did.
And Adam Berry sang some songs for us. Now, Adam Berry has a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
He was the man
impressive.
is right. He's got I could listen to him sing all day.
At karaoke, he pretty much shamed every single person in there.
Yeah, because he just went up there and, sang some musical stuff, and it was gorgeous, and it was just like, get out of here. Like you don't just get to come in and do that. He's really a beautiful voice. But anyway, so you might have seen her if you watch Kindred Spirits. She's been featured on that show. And so Porter and Stephanie get together, and they go to different places around the East Coast, and they host investigations. Stephanie's a psychic, and Porter does like the history and the science, and so he's got the meters. And what they do is, I think what's interesting, we talk about this in the interview, is that, the investigation, Stephanie might be having a conversation with a dead person while Porter is getting readings on the meter. And he says that's kind of interesting validation. And that's the kind of stuff you can expect to see at those kind of ghost hunts. So we wanted to talk to him more about it. And so joining us, let's go right to it. Joining us today, we have psychic medium Stephanie Burke and historian and ghost investigator Scott Porter from the Tennessee Wraith Chasers. How you guys doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Well, it's -5 in Wisconsin today, so it's par for the course.
You're a popsicle, huh?
Yeah, it's about what we expect over here. But anyway, thank you guys for stopping by. Let's just start talking about what got you guys. What I'm always interested in is what made people weirdos in the first place. So, I know what made me into a professional weirdo. So, what got you guys into ghosts and the paranormal and stuff like that in the first place?
Hey, this one's got a great story, and I love to hear it every time she tells it.
All right.
So I'm going to put her up first.
I was born a weirdo, so I don't know what it's like to be normal. And I tell people that all the time. Everybody asks me, when did you discover that you were a psychic medium, or when did you know that you could communicate with spirit? And I have always been able to do it. My first and earliest memory of being able to see a spirit physically in front of me was when I was about 18 months old. And it wasn't until I was about 7 when I lost my grandmother that I realized what I was actually doing, because, 1 minute I had her physically, and then the next minute I could see her in a different form, but I couldn't touch her, I couldn't hold her, I couldn't really communicate the way that I used to with her. So that was like my first realization that was definitely strange.
Let's unpack that for a second, because
Okay.
I'm a guy that's never, I've seen a couple of weird things, but nothing, not like, hey, grandma's still here in the room or whatever. So
Yeah.
When you first had that experience, you were looking at someone, and when you say they appeared in a different form, what kind of different form you mean?
So different form meaning, as you and I are talking right now, as Porter's sitting right next to me, there's a physical form. I can sit here and, touch his arm and, feel, something physical there. But when I remember very specifically when I knew my grandmother was sick. She was diagnosed with small cell lung cancer, which takes you very fast. And it was a very short amount of time that we had with her once she was diagnosed. And we knew it was even shorter because she was actually allergic to the chemo. So she had to stop it. So we knew it was going to be quick. And a 7-year-old doesn't usually understand those things. But like I said, I was a little weird. So I remember when my mom actually told me that she finally crossed over and she passed. And I didn't even let out one emotion because it was almost like she had been preparing me for it anyways. And then when it happened, I didn't understand what that meant because I could still see her. And she looked like you and I, but just a little see-through, not totally the physical mass that, we're used to. And,
sure.
She popped in and out. She didn't walk out of a room like a normal person. It was what she would appear, and then she would disappear. So it was very strange to get used to, but I knew that there was something different. I understood on a soul level what was happening, but I didn't understand death like someone else would. The normal grieving process, the normal loss of a loved one, you're never going to see them again, is the feeling that people normally get. But I couldn't understand that. Even to this day, I still am not good with it, just because I end up forgetting is the way that I describe it. I'll go to drive home, drive by my grandparents' house and totally forget that they've been gone for 10 years.
Well, that's really interesting. The idea that you haven't had to deal with, the regular grieving and death process like the rest of us have. Like, what idea? Like, so when my grandma died, that was it.
Right.
Like, she wasn't in the room or nothing like that. Like, she was in the ground. So
right.
That's an interesting perspective. The fact that your entire life,
yes,
you see dead people.
Right.
All right.
Entire life.
So that's where you're coming from, Stephanie. Now, Porter,
yes.
Where are you coming from? Do you see dead people as well?
Not the same way that that Stephanie sees them, or maybe not as often. Although there have been times.
Not as often, but
there have been times.
Weird lately.
Things have gotten real weird lately. That's the thing
Good.
about it. Throughout my life, I grew up in a strict Christian home. Very faith-based. Very firm belief. And, I've been around death all my life. My father's a preacher, pastor of the church. So, I've always been around that. And what the interesting thing is that everybody you talk to, and typically in the South, everybody gets together after the funeral, after the wake, and all that stuff, and you hang out, you talk, you kind of reminisce, and
sure.
And it's funny to hear everybody has a ghost story. Whether they believe or not, they have a story about something that they can't explain.
No, speaking from like a Southern Baptist perspective or whatever, so they're cool with it's ghosts, or they don't think it's, like the devil coming, like taking the form of somebody that.
Well, I mean, there's different thoughts. I don't think, I don't think we, as far as from that aspect of it, we don't truly know, because even the Bible tells us that there are demons among us, and what better way for a demon to try to deceive us and to appear to us as someone we loved and lost in life and make us think that they still walk the earth in that form.
Well, I absolutely believe it because I've dated them.
Yes, I was married to one. So, but that's the thing about it, though. You hear these stories throughout life, and so it makes you curious, And so I had this curiosity that I wanted to know why everybody had these stories, and there's got to be some kind of common ground, some kind of common connection. And there has to be something to it. And then years later, when I was in college, I was at home at my parents' house one weekend. I got up and I smelled breakfast. I could smell, the eggs, the bacon, the biscuits, and all that.
And when you're in college and you come home for breakfast, it's even better.
It is better.
Like it's way better than being like a kid and being like, oh, breakfast just happens. No, when you're in college, like, oh my God, somebody has to make breakfast happen.
Yes, and somebody's making breakfast for you, but just don't come home smelling like booze. That's the thing. Don't do that.
Fair enough.
But I mean, I walked in the hallway, and it had been a night that had been, I'd been home, I hadn't been out running around, but I looked in the kitchen, and I saw what I thought was my mom. I could see her moving. I could hear the skillet. I could hear the ceiling, the exhaust fan running. I could hear everything. So I went to the bathroom, freshened up. Couldn't have been in there more than 30 seconds. Splash some water on the face, wash my hands, yada, yada, yada. And I walk out, and the odor's gone. There's no sound, there's no smell, there's no nothing. And so I checked everywhere that I would normally look. There was no breakfast there. I yelled for my parents. They weren't there. And finally, I thought, well, I'll call and see where they're at because their car's gone. So I called them, and I said, hey, where'd you do breakfast? My dad's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, Mom was just in here cooking breakfast, and she'd always leave me a plate in the microwave, and there's not one in there. What did y'all do with it? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I heard a commotion. My mom got on the phone, and she's like, what are you saying? And I said, I just got up. You were in here cooking breakfast, and I was going to eat some. And she goes, honey, we're shopping. We've been shopping for hours. I said, I just saw you. You were standing at the stove in a pink house coat cooking breakfast. And she said, number one, I don't own a pink house coat. Number two, if somebody's in that house cooking breakfast, call the police and get out. I was like, well, I'm going to eat first if I can find the food,
Right.
But I mean, that really made me curious because that was my first true vivid experience. And I really wanted to know what else was out there.
Well, that's awesome. That's a couple very different introductions to the weird.
Yes.
First of all, one, like, okay, you grew up with it. And the other, like, okay, I found this out later in life. Like, not even, like high school experimenting, like, whoa, we play with a Ouija board and all of a sudden I talk. It was like, hey, I saw somebody, what I was hoping making me bacon didn't happen. But okay. So.
It was a bacon Ouija board. That's what it was.
Right. So how did you move into wanting to research this more? Now, I know, Stephanie, I've listened to you on the South Coast, the Paranormal South Coast Radio.
Yeah.
What's called? Spooky South
Yep.
Coast. And you're in Massachusetts.
I am.
Okay. So how did you get involved in your various, and Scott on the Tennessee Wraith Chasers and eventually doing stuff on Destination America? How'd you guys get involved in not just being interested in this kind of stuff, but then moving it to a place where you're comfortable with sharing with everyone that, okay, hey, I look for ghosts. Hey, I see dead people. Hi.
Yeah.
How'd you guys get into that?
That's a great question. So not only could I experience all of this stuff, but it was always a fascination of mine. Anything to do with a ghost story or a lot of even true crime stuff fascinated me, growing up. And God, I just told the story the other day, but I had this weird almanac which was all about vampires and werewolves and ghosts and all these crazy stories. And I used to hide it in between my textbooks.
Okay.
So my parents think I was doing homework, but I'd be reading it. So I loved all of it. And, any type of, TV show around the Halloween time that would come on, I was obsessed. And I started to move into, as I get older, I was the kid with the haunted house. So that didn't really help me any either. My house was built in 1792. It was part of the Underground Railroad. It was like Grand Central Station. I had ghosts walking in and out the entire time. None of my friends wanted to come over. So that didn't really add to my story very well.
As far as your parents, though, were your parents like okay with everything, or were they like, did you share with them the fact that you could see things or that you were having experiences? Were they like, oh, we have experiences too, or we get it, or or were they weird about it? So like, how did your parents deal with the fact that you were living in a haunted house built? I mean, 1792 in Wisconsin. That's before any of the settlers or whatever are here. And me as a Polak, I'm like 1792. I think we were still, hauling dirt in Warsaw or whatever. So, how did your parents deal with it?
So that's another great story. My entire life, I would do things to my parents that would drive them absolutely insane. My mom actually has a gift and wants nothing to do with it. And my dad was a ghost hunter. He was taking pictures with infrared film on really, really old cameras in like the 60s and 70s. And I remember finding them as a kid, and he would always tell ghost stories, or he had the same obsession and fascination with the ghosts that I did. And it was fine to talk about it in that sense. But when I started to do things to my parents that really, brought out the abilities that I had, it kind of freaked them out a little bit. They never told me I was wrong, not until I was older. But when I was very little, gosh, there's a VHS tape out there, and I know Porter and I have talked about it a bunch of times. I'm gonna have to find it and take a video of it so that way I can post it out to the world. Of me at Christmas, I was 2, and I would pick up every single box that they would hand me, and it's wrapped, and say, "Oh, thank you, Mom, thank you, Dad, for this." And I would say exactly what was in the box, and then just hand it off to them so they could unwrap it because they already knew what it was. And I'm still like that to this day. Nobody can hand me something without me knowing what's inside of a present. So everybody hates me because you can't surprise me.
That's a good tip.
Yes.
Like don't bother, just put up an Amazon wish list because no surprises. Yeah.
So my father would kind of, just deal with my abilities and kind of brush them off because he's a hardcore skeptic. And around the time that John Denver died, and I can't remember exactly how old I was, I remember sitting down, and this is, before the days of the internet, and you had the news, but the news was behind because nothing was instant at that point. And I sat down and I just said, Daddy, who is John Denver? And he told me, he's a singer and everything else, about him. And I said, oh, okay, well, he just died in a plane crash. And he didn't know what to do with himself. He was, how do you know that? That's not true.
That's pretty cool.
And I started to explain.
Not cool for John Denver, obviously.
Right. So I think as soon as it came out, he came back to me and said, how did you know that? And he sat me down all serious, hands on my shoulders, and needed to know. And I explained to him how I know, and I was just explaining to him how my abilities worked and how I knew. And he just said, okay, so we're going to deal with this when your mother gets home. I think that you might be psychic like your grandmother was. And at that point, I can't even begin to describe the emotion I felt. It was a mixture between sadness and anger, because I didn't know what psychic was,
Sure.
I was very young, but I remember feeling like my grandmother had something to do with this, but she already passed, so I'll never know. And I kind of just, took that in, and I understood, kind of on a soul level, but not really, a logical level for how young I was. And we kind of left it alone after that. And
well, you had to grieve for John Denver. And for you guys out there that haven't, if you're listening, so John Denver obviously was a singer in the 70s. I knew him because he did stuff with the Muppets, and that's how I figured out. But John Denver died in the 1990s, or maybe it was the early 2000s, in an ultralight crash. So an ultralight's like a personal flight vehicle kind of thing. It's basically like between like a hang glider and a little plane, and he died, in the mountains, as he used to like to sing about or whatever. So the fact, you're obviously younger than me, Stephanie, and the fact that you might know who John Denver is, or might know that he died before the news said it or whatever. If I was your father, I would have freaked out too.
Yeah, he totally did. So, but he let my mother handle it. And, after that, my parents would tell me all the time, the house isn't haunted, it's fine, not a big deal, there's no ghosts, because they wanted me to be able to sleep at night, make me feel comfortable. So it got to the point where I was probably about 15 or so, and I sat my mother down and I said, okay, listen, because I tried to run from my abilities at one point because I wanted to be accepted at school and be normal, and I didn't want to be that weird kid with a haunted house that talked to ghosts. So I sat my mother down and I said, okay, listen, she was a nurse for 20 plus years. And I said, you're going to either have to take me somewhere and have me evaluated and medicated, or you can tell me that this house is haunted. And she laughed at me and she started to tell me all about each spirit that was in the house and that she was able to see and communicate with, but she tried to bury it because she didn't want me to be afraid. And my poor brother for years never said anything, but he was experiencing the same thing. And but I always used to fix it for him. And even now, I haven't lived at home in a long time. He'll still call me when something's happening and I have to come fix it for him. So we finally sat down, we had the conversation. She told me about the family history. She told me about everything. And I felt so much better, but I still felt, how am I going to tell people about this? I've had people my entire life that I've hid this from. I think it was at the time, my high school boyfriend was the only one that knew about it. And it was just because he spent so much time with me that he noticed things that most people did not. Even I had a great time, explaining things away to my friends and just making it seem like I was really good at, knowing what they were thinking or saying the same thing as them at the same time. It was just a coincidence.
Or very astute as to predicting their Christmas present.
Yeah. So in middle school and high school, people used to call me Fortune Cookie because they would come to me for advice and it would come true. And I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, being like 12, 13 years old, but that's what I was doing. And it kind of stuck. So it was out there a little bit, but not mainstream. Like, once ghost hunters hit the air, it was a lot, easier for everybody to understand that things are out here and there's people on TV that are, out there, hunting these things and looking for these things. But I was still terrified. And it wasn't until I think it was either my senior year in high school or my junior year in high school, I started listening to Spooky South Coast. And I said, oh my God, there's people in this area that are just like me. And this was probably about 2005 or so. So Ghost Hunters had only been on the air for about a year. And I started to realize that, paranormal groups are popping up everywhere, probably all over the country, all over the world. And but these people were in my backyard. So I started to listen to the radio. And then fast forward, I think probably my first year of college, I went to the radio station with a friend. And there was a medium on that night that was doing readings live on air. And I was sitting in the background, and anybody that's been in a radio station, especially one that hasn't been updated, that you can't hear the caller unless you have the headphones on.
Right.
So, because they have two stations there, one has it, you can hear it throughout the speakers, but we were in the one that you cannot hear unless you have the headphones on. And she was doing readings, and she was starting to struggle a little bit because it was toward the end of the night. And I was just, looking at my phone, playing on my phone, waiting for the radio show to be over so I could talk to everybody. And I was way back in the corner, and I just popped up, not paying attention, and said, you're talking to my brother on the phone. You're trying to connect with my grandfather. This is what he's trying to piece together for you. And basically just told her everything and then looked back at my phone. And everybody in the room just sat there and didn't know what to do or say. They continued on.
Right. So they're like, well, let's get this chick off the air. And like,
right.
You should come here because obviously she's not figuring it out. So
I didn't
go
know
back
I
to
did.
the psychic fair, honey, or whatever.
Oh my God.
It's Stephanie up here.
So we got off the air, they got off the air, they finished their thing, and I walked up to say goodbye, and my friend Tim, who's the host of the show, said, hey, when you decide to finally come out of the closet and be comfortable with what you do, I want to be your first interview. And I remember thinking, how does he know? And I walked out. I didn't know until they released the video on YouTube afterward what I had done. And I basically outed myself to the world and didn't mean to, but I could still keep it under wraps at that point. And I tried to ghost hunt to kind of really get a feel for the phenomena of, everything that's on. And I wasn't very good at looking at equipment because I was constantly connecting and I was constantly, seeing, spirit here, feeling energy there, having a conversation. And I finally, I don't remember when my true, out to the world type of situation was, but I gradually moved into it, and I had the support from a ton of people who, said, I want to work with you here, I want to work with you there. But it wasn't until I filmed for TLC's Kindred Spirits with Amy Bruni and Adam Berry that that was my true, here it is, national television. I can't hide from it anymore. And that was really terrifying for me because I had hid it for so long. And I always said I never wanted to be out there in the spotlight, but if I had a chance to help someone, then I would do that. And
so when you came out like that, were people like, hey, what are the lottery numbers, or is my girlfriend cheating on me, or like, so what kind of things do people ask you when you're psychic?
I've been trying the lottery numbers for months now, and she won't do it.
Yeah. Like, what's the megabucks or whatever? Like, what? So, what kind of questions do people ask you if they think you're psychic, or if they think they're reading your minds? Like, do you find people treat you differently?
Yes, absolutely. I think, closer friends of mine will never ask me anything, even if they need help. And I think it's just because they forget that I do this sort of thing, and they try to respect and not be like everybody else. I get the constant questions. People always want to know about their love life. People always want to know about financial situations. So that'll be the most common thing that people ask me. But the true, first question from everyone and anyone, doesn't matter who they are, is they want to hear from a loved one because the grief is just so heavy. And I try to help as much as possible with that aspect of things because I know how much that can hurt. I've lost a lot of people. And like I said before, even though my sense of death isn't the same as everyone else because I know it's not totally final, it still hurts just as much. I'm still human.
So what happens, like, so let's say that somebody's, like you said, the first thing people want to know is, hey, is my grandma okay? Or is my,
right.
mother finally happy on the other side or whatever? Is my dad not so much of a prick? So like, what happens if you don't see anything, or you're like, hey, that person's not communicating with me or something? Like, have you had to tell people, like, sorry, mom's not talking or anything like that? Or maybe mom's still judging you? Like, no, your mother still thinks you're a failure.
So they always want to know if they're okay and if they're happy. That's a number one question. And I kind of skip over that a lot because I just assume everybody knows that they're okay. And I've had to, rewind myself at times and like let people know and reassure them because I always forget that that's the most common thing that people do want to know. When it comes to spirits on the other side, they've crossed over. They kind of let go of their human emotions. If you have a blowout fight with someone and they die the next day, we're left with the guilty feelings. We're left with what if. They're not. And, so mending that's actually really common. People will come to make sure that they can, tie up those loose ends and like, really mend the relationship. But once they've crossed over, they don't care about that. They just care about your well-being and, full of love for you. And
so you think that spirits, once they cross over, are not as angry as they are when they're here. So they feel like, hey, it's all right. Because usually we think about ghosts. We think about ghosts that have been created or something because of a tragedy or because of something horrible happening. And you're saying that in your experience, ghosts are like, whatevs, I'm dead.
Well, you're talking about two different things.
Okay.
So you have past that have crossed over, onto the other side, not hanging around. They can come back and visit whenever they want. Ghosts, meaning earthbound spirits, are still here and they still hold on to their human emotions and they still have, a lot of their personality. They're going about their business as if they were when they were living. That's two
sometimes they're making porter breakfast.
Yes. But it wasn't good. I didn't get to try it. What heck?
Right. No fair, ghost.
Yeah, no fair.
Ghost jerk.
The most that they do get is, the concern for us here. They don't lose their personality usually, though, when they go to communicate. So if someone was a jerk here, they're going to kind of be jerky on the other side, too.
Sure.
So that doesn't really change. But I have had instances where very few, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 in, the 15 years that I've been doing this, that I can describe them to a T. I can tell the person that I'm reading exactly, this is what they look like. This is kind of like their mannerisms and everything else. Here's a few bits of information. But if they're stubborn and they're either not comfortable with the process because it's the first time that someone's connecting to them, or they don't really know what to do, which is kind of common sometimes if, the person's never been read before, they've never talked to a medium before,
sure,
then that can be a little awkward at times. But usually the second or third time, they get a little more comfortable and they can communicate. But it doesn't.
I'm just looking for one to do laundry.
Right. like one to help out around the house would be great.
Yeah, help out the house, cut grass, do laundry,
or,
fix things.
I tell you, so my daughter is 15 months old, so I think about like daycare expenses and stuff. Like if a ghost could come in, like I would be happy to hire an illegal immigrant ghost or whatever. Like I would be completely comfortable with that to save me some bucks. So what's the most surprising thing that you think a spirit has said to you where you were like, hey, I didn't see that one coming. Or, like, hey, like somebody came through and said something where you're like, oh, I don't know if I should say this to the person or whatever. Is that kind of situation happen where it's like, oh, they're still full of love, but
Most awkward. And it's tough because I can't think logically when I do that. I think I can think of a couple instances, but there was one time where I had to repeat exactly what they were saying, and I didn't understand what it meant, but I said, I just need to say this to you. Unbeknownst to me, I was swearing in Italian.
oh,
So I said the F-bomb. So that was fun. There was another time where I have this spirit that comes through pretty regularly, and he complains about his daughter to his son all the time. And that can get, a little awkward
Sure.
if you're doing that in a crowd, especially. And, they'll say, because they'll express their disappointment. And I'll have to say, hey, Dad's not really happy with how your sister's acting. And I have to say it how it is, because it's not up to me to interpret it. It's just up
Sure.
to me to deliver the information exactly how it is. Because if I sugarcoat something and your past loved one is swearing in Italian, that's their personality. That's what's going to make that person feel validated. Who am I to change the story? So that's not up to me. But I've had, other instances where, an ex-boyfriend's come through to somebody and the husband's sitting right next to the person. Just weird situations that we consider strange, in the human form.
Sure.
But, it usually gets awkward, and I try to make light of it at least to make everybody feel comfortable. But
okay.
it does get interesting. It gets pretty funny.
Well, I'd always think that the family secrets or whatever coming through. I mean, that's the most validation you can get, because it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm not your real mother. What? Something like
Oh my goodness.
thrown out there.
Yep.
And then you're like, well, hey, you didn't make that up or whatever. Like that was what was.
Right.
Hey, that's what she said, man. Like I'm just here. Like I'm Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. Okay. So Porter, how did you get from seeing the lady in the pink house coat then to being like, okay, well, I'm going to now travel with a team and be okay with putting my picture all over the television and stuff like that with as a guy that goes out and does this? How did you get there?
Well, it's funny because you have these experiences and you think, gosh, there's no one else out there that's going to be like me. People are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm nuts. And so I am. I mean, you too. But we're a nutty pair at this point. We've been traveling for a while with each other. So, but yeah, it's kind of crazy because you start thinking like that, and you wonder if there's anybody else out there that's experiencing this stuff. And then I can remember when my grandmother passed away. I walked into the room the day she died, and when I walked in, she looked at me and she said, "Who's that old man?" And my mom looked at me, and I was looking at my grandmother, looked back at my mom. My mom was like, That's Scott, Granny. And she goes, "Oh, I know it's Scott. Who's that old man with him?" And I was like, of course, both of us, my mother and I both, we looked around like, what is she seeing?
Oh, yeah, the deathbed apparitions kind of thing that you hear about that all the time. Well, I mean, we hear about all that time because we're weirdos, but like regular people don't hear about that all the time, right?
But it was crazy. And the other thing that was real unique, and of course, I have a medical background too. So the thing that was really unique about my grandmother when she passed, her heart would actually stop beating. She would be in asystole, no electrical activity in her heart whatsoever for a minute. And the entire time she would be sitting there talking to you. And you could literally watch her as her heart started beating again. You could see it in her neck. And then you'd see it stop and you would just wait. But she would just keep talking. And she was always talking about her relationship with God and her experience with God. And it was just amazing to watch that and see that. And then to hear her talking about there being some old man with me. So take that story and spring forward with all the other crazy stories I've had. A buddy of mine, Doogie, we hung out together, worked out together. And we had an interest in the paranormal. And he had bought a house that was haunted, and we used to see things happen there, hear stuff happen. And we always said we needed to set up cameras and try to catch it. Of course, we were sitting around there watching Ghost Hunters on TV, and that's who we were idolizing at that point. And and it was like we got to figure out how to do this stuff here. And
so what? So you're living in Tennessee?
Yep.
What part of Tennessee? Like rural, city, or like what areas?
kind of rural, outside of Nashville.
And you're right. Okay, so you're living outside of Nashville, the rural area. You're watching the ghost hunters, and you're like,
"Yep,
we can do that.
We got to do this, but not on TV. We've just got to do this for ourselves." And so, we kind of all of us went our separate ways. And I knew Chris from church, but we all different ways. And then Chris ended up on Ghost Hunters Academy, and then he didn't go back for the second season. He came back to Tennessee and tried to start his own team, the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, with some guys that he worked with at the newspaper. And then he ran into Doogie one day at the hospital and was talking to Doogie about it. And Doogie got involved and said, I would like to join. And so then Doogie called me and asked me if I want to get into it. And I was like, heck yeah, man, we've always talked about that. So, that's kind of how we started the team. And then down the road, we were posting some of our evidence and some of our experiences online on our webpage and on YouTube. And one day we got an email that asked if we were interested or would be interested in doing our own TV show. And I think we deleted it the first time. We thought it was just a joke. And then they reached back out to us again. And so we responded, still thinking it was a joke. And lo and behold, here we are today, 50 episodes later. Still hunting.
That's fantastic. So when you guys do the TV stuff, like what kind of input do you get from, so as the historian, obviously you have vetted the venues, vetted the places you go to and check that out. And then you participate in the investigations and you go through that. So how much input do the TV producers have or whatever when they're like, all right, juice this up. Like, hey, we haven't seen anybody like stick an old woman in a corner or something like that. Like, so what, like, how do they do that? Because I'm always interested because sometimes, you watch Ghost Adventures or whatever, and they'll make, like Zach feels a tingle in his arm, and then like you wait for 15 minutes, like Zach felt a tingle in his arm, and he's like, "What's up, brother? I felt a tingle in my arm, man." And so how do you juice it up, or are you finding that you're allowed to present your results to the world mostly unmolested?
Well, that was one of the things that we started out when we first agreed to do the show. We told them, we said, and Tremendous and Destination America have been fabulous with working with us, because we told them that if we're going to do the show, we want to take the viewer on the experience that we have. We want them to experience what we experience. We don't want to manufacture. We want, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Even when we were filming our pilot episode, Ghostland, Tennessee, we had a producer that was on set that was really getting bored. He was getting tired of things happening.
And that's 95% of ghost hunting. It's like, all right, guys, let's, I hope you brought Words with Friends or whatever on your phone, because that's what you're going to be doing.
Got it. Because, this stuff doesn't happen on command. So, but this producer, he was really adamant about getting something to happen. And I sat him down and I said, listen, if you'll shut up and get out of our way, we'll do our job and you'll get a TV show. But if you keep doing this crap, we're just going to get mad and we're going to take you in the woods and we're going to whoop your butt.
Right. And so you're going to get a backwoods ass kicking.
We're just going to whip your ass. That's what we told him. So he sat down and sulked and got quiet, and we started doing our investigation, and lo and behold, we had something go down and ended up with what I like to call the booger in the box. It was the first episodes where we had the Devil's Toy Box, and I still can't explain that thing, man. That was ridiculous when that thing was scratched.
For people that might not have seen it, why don't you set that up real quick?
So we were always talking about doing experiments and trying to find something that was different. And so I think it was Chasey Ray that came to us. We all used to sit around and talk about this stuff. And Chasey came and he said, man, I was reading about this thing called a Devil's Toy Box, where you take 6 mirrors and you face them inward, make a cube. And it's supposed to help you either communicate, or the spirit gets inside of it and can't get away, or, he had read all kinds of stories. And so we were like, sounds like a good deal. Let's try it, because we'll try anything once. As long as it doesn't kill us, we'll try it again.
Right. It's just mirrors.
That's just mirrors. What are they going to do? Cut you? But anyway, so we decided to build this thing, and we put it in this house that this family had issues. They were having things happen, and they couldn't explain it. And so we had this box sitting on the second floor of the house in the hallway. And as we were doing our investigation, it was very quiet. Then all of a sudden, we started getting some activity around some of the meters, the EMF, the K2s, the male meters that were around it, the elf meters that were around it. We started seeing that there was some EMF building up around this Devil's Toy Box. And so we got up there and we started asking some pointed questions. And at one point in time, I said, okay, we've got these meters all around the box. From my viewpoint, can you light up just the meters on the right-hand side? And they lit up. And I said, okay, that's a cool trick. Can you do the ones on the left-hand side? And the ones on the left-hand side lit up. And so we're thinking, okay, we've got something that's really communicating with us, something that's interacting with us through these devices. And so let's say, let's take this box and take it outside and see if whatever's there travels with us. So Chasey Ray and I picked the box up and we're carrying it down the steps. And as we start down the steps, we feel something move inside of it. Now, mind you, there's nothing inside this box except for mirrors that are in a wooden frame inside the box facing inward so that they can't fall in or move, and they're glued together.
But how big is it?
It's the actual cube is a foot by, it's 12-inch tiles, 12-inch mirrored tiles in a cube. So it's okay. 12-inch by 12-inch. And the box is even bigger. So the box that it was inside, because we had it set inside of a protected box. And as we carried it down the steps, we felt something move in it, and I thought it was him. And he thought it was me, and when we figured out that it was neither one of us, it kind of startled us. And so we carried this thing outside and set it in the yard, and it still had activity around it. The temperature went to 66.6, which was kind of ironic because the temperature outside that night wasn't that cool.
Okay.
And so then we were like, okay, what are we going to do with this thing? And so our producer that was on set, the one that we told you that's no longer around, well, he's working for Disney now, but he said, well, we got to blow it up. You guys are Tennessee boys, you got to blow this thing up. And we're like, no. We're not going to blow this box up. No, we're not doing it.
Right, you guys got to have some fireworks somewhere, don't you? Like a grenade or whatever.
Yeah, you got to blow it up. You got to explode it. And I'm like, listen, if this thing actually worked and there's a booger in this box and we blow it up, then you're going to have a booger outside the box that's pissed and somebody's getting hurt.
Right.
Specify for those of us up north that
a ghost in the box. Okay. Golly, I say booger all the time, and she's like, "What are you doing? Picking your nose?"
Well, it sounds like somebody sneezed in a box.
Right? Are we talking a tissue box? What are we talking about? He said booger all the time. I'm like, what are you saying?
It's a booger. Don't you know? It's like no. I could say haint. It's a haint in the box.
I still wouldn't know what that was.
So
a haint. I just read a story about fairies in Tennessee.
Yeah.
The tufa or whatever in Tennessee. Tufa is a particular. It's like a book series by a guy that from Tennessee, but he lives in Wisconsin though.
Okay.
But he was talking about the haints that were visiting the tufa.
The haint, and I thought you were saying tooth fairy at first.
Oh no. Tufa. The idea is that there's a particular group of English and Irish that moved to Tennessee, and they have their fairy folk that live.
They're fairy. Mm-hmm. There you go.
That's a fun book series. But haint, I heard that word before, but that's the word they use very frequently. So
very frequent.
Haint, or now I will call them boogers.
Booger.
I'll be like, hey, get that booger over here.
And if you got a booger in a box, you got to make sure it's not a tissue, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Make sure that it's Slimer and not slime. Okay. So you guys have done a bunch of investigations together now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also do, like they have like, hey, you can do an investigation with Porter and Stephanie and things like that. So
right.
When you guys do an investigation, first of all, it's pretty handy to have a psychic around because most of the people I hang around with, don't see anything. Or I'm lucky if they can, spell. So how do you guys do an investigation? Like, how does this start out? What do you bring to the table? So for people who might be interested in checking out investigation or just want to investigate your way,
mm-hmm.
What are some specific things you guys do when you set up to do an investigation?
Good question.
That is a good question. We kind of go with the flow. That's the thing is we get in there
mm-hmm.
and the ones that we've done that we just kind of go with the feel. You start your thing and I'm usually holding some type of device trying to watch and track.
I've said multiple times that God put him on this earth to do math for me for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Anything scientific in equipment or here, figure this out or fix this, that's perfect. Because if I go into that type of environment, I'm not worried about equipment. I love the scientific way of doing things, whether you want to call it scientific or not, but that's what people know it as. I don't necessarily think I agree with that term, but, all the equipment's laid out. And I've always said, you can have a bunch of meters laid out and 20 ghosts in front of you. It doesn't mean it's going to light it up. A piece of equipment just lighting up doesn't really excite me, but when there's something going on that can coincide with me getting some type of, activity or speaking with a spirit or whatever, or if an EVP catches an entire conversation that I'm having with a spirit, you can hear me ask a question and hear it answer me at the same time that I am as well, then that's validating for me, and that's what fascinates me, because how am I doing that at the same time that equipment is picking it up? So I particularly enjoy working, with Porter for that reason. He already knows the history of the place usually, so he can tell me yes or no if I'm correct.
Well, have you guys been to a place where you look at the history and you're like, oh, this place has got to be haunted? And then you get there and Stephanie's like, there's nobody here. Like, let's go. Like, let's just go to Dairy Queen or whatever, because there's nothing.
I'm all for food. I mean, it's usually McDonald's.
McDonald's, yeah.
But I'm a huge history nerd. We both are, and it actually annoys me. Going before we go to a location and you get to know all the history before I do. That's my number one question as soon as I'm done is, oh my God, tell me the history of this place. Or, if there's like a museum curator there, or, there's somebody that knows everything about the property that we might not have found in any type of records, then I love to know that stuff, because sometimes I've always said I love to peel back that extra layer and find the mystery behind the history, something that was lost in history, or something that, I can help piece together for someone. So I love working with him for that reason, because, he already knows all that stuff ahead of time, or he can deal with all the equipment and the flashing lights, and the two kind of go hand in hand and kind of meet in the middle, even though you weren't the biggest believer at first.
Well, true. But the best thing about it, though, is when you can take something that is a scientific type meter, and then you can see it interact as you're having your interaction.
Right.
Just like when I can't remember where we're at now, we were using the kinetics, and that spirit or whatever was there, and somebody was saying that it was touching their back, and you could see something, and then I was watching the kinetics, I could see it touch them, and I put my hand out and I said, can you touch my hand? And you could literally see it on the kinetics reaching toward me, and the arm of it stretching to try to reach toward me. I think that was one of these things.
So just to explain the kinetics to the people who are listening, that's the camera that shows like the stick figures, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's technology that kind of came from the Wii.
Yeah.
Like Nintendo Wii and the Microsoft Kinect and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
That's it.
I mean, I'll be on investigations and I'll be sending him video from where I'm at to have him explain everything to me, because, his various degrees of everything, he knows, how things work, and why isn't this piece of equipment working the way I want it to? Well, did you do this, and that? Did you shut it off? You turn it on? You take the batteries out? Yes, I did all that stuff. Now, please tell me why it's still not working.
All right, throw it away. It's not going to work. Just use your feels.
Well, speaking of the feels, though, if you can, talk to spirits or at least get some kind of message from them, what I want to know is, so we die, we just hanging around or what? Like, what are people doing? Like, why are they haunting a place? Why are they still hanging out in the house when they could be somewhere better? Or Hawaii.
Or Hawaii.
Right. Why would you haunt a place in up north? Up north Wisconsin is nice during the summer, but it's like -14 there right now. So you're dead and you're still there. Why?
Every spirit has a story, just like every person here has a story. And I found, you have the typical, thing that everybody believes, I think because it was on Casper, was there's unfinished business. I haven't come across that yet. Some people are afraid to leave their families because they want to take care of them still. There's other people that, depending on, when they passed, their religious beliefs or their personal belief system keeps them here, or, they expected something different, due to religious beliefs, that they decided to stick around because they were waiting for a certain something to happen. Sometimes you have, a tragedy that happens so quick that they almost get lost and confused and need help finding their way. And it's a very, spectrum. I mean, it's a huge spectrum of what, from one end to the other. It doesn't matter. Whatever their personal story is, it's always different. I did a case probably about close to 10 years ago where this poor woman was terrified of her home. And, the whole house would shake, this stuff would happen, that stuff would happen. Very dramatic. And I said, okay, I'll come in here, I'll check it out. And I remember finding the spirits in the garage, terrified. And, I sat down, who are you? What's your name? Trying to figure out their story. And they kept pointing outside the garage door. So I opened the back door and I looked out and I saw this shrine, which was due to a murder that happened with, they made a whole, candles and flowers and everything with the person's picture on there. Well, I start looking back and forth and I realized that the spirit standing in front of me, like the face matches the picture that's across the street. And he felt like he could not move on from what happened to him because everybody was still coming to that place every single night and mourning his death. And he wanted to be there every single night when they came. And I had to explain to him that it's fine. You can cross over. You can come back and visit whenever you want. And I kind of helped him along with this process. But it's always a different story for each spirit. And obviously very different from somebody that passed in the 1600s and 1700s to someone that might pass right now.
Okay. So when you're talking to a spirit, like the idea of, to me, like I don't always get the idea of like, oh, go to the light or go to the next place or whatever. Can they go to the next place then come back for a visit?
Yes.
Like, hey, I was just in heaven or wherever it is, or Nebraska, wherever you go, and be like, hey, I just wanted to stop in to, make sure you weren't messing up the home, or, like that the new husband's not a total jerk or whatever.
Right.
So, like, can they go back or in your experience, the people you talk to, can they go back and forth?
Yes, absolutely. Once they've crossed over, they can visit wherever they want. They usually go through a learning curve, I call it, where they kind of have to get used to not being a physical body anymore and being, a ball of energy instead. Some spirits have told me that you have to sit down and kind of review your life, almost like, reviewing a football tape after you just lost a game. And going through, what was that for?
I heard that jab.
No.
I heard that.
After you lost a game.
So it was not a jab, jerk. Reviewing the tape, so to speak. Reviewing like this is where things went great, and this was a great deed that you did, or different things like that, or just kind of reviewing everything. But I get bits and pieces from them. I guess because I'm not supposed to know everything. Because if I knew everything, then it would kind of defeat the purpose.
Sure.
And I always we're not going to know everything until we get there. But I collect little pieces of information, here and there from different spirits.
So when you guys do the investigation, like Porter, you were saying, like you'll see something happen on the machines or whatever you use or the meters, and then like while she's talking to them.
Right.
So, like, describe that in a way of like, so what kind of meter are you using, and is it she says something and then all of a sudden, you'll like see the K2 pop up or whatever. Like, so how does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it could be any piece of equipment that you're using. I mean, it could be, if you're using a camera, a video camera, if you're using the Kinects.
What's your preferred?
Gosh, man, I vary. It just depends. Right now, I've really enjoyed using some of the electrostatic machines that pick up static energy, the periscopes. I enjoy playing with those a little bit because they're easier to see, and they're kind of directional in where the energy's coming from. And then the spirit boxes, I've liked using some of those, although you're not too crazy about those things.
You're talking about the thing with the blue lights?
Yeah.
Okay, so explain this. So what do you mean by spirit box? It's a whole bunch of different ones that people talk about. So which ones are you talking about? And also, Stephanie, what's your complaint about?
Well, yeah, like the Frank's box, those types of things.
Don't get me started on Frank's box.
Those.
I don't even like Frank.
Really interesting experiences with some of those. I've had them actually call out names of people that were in the room that I had never mentioned the name, and even say their relationships with one another. I've had.
Now, is this the box that will shoot out random words like the Ovulus or whatever, or is it the one that does the radio frequencies?
No. That's not the phonetic generator or the.
I'm not a fan of those.
The SBX or SQ.
Yeah, I feel like it's stretching at that point. Like, sometimes they're interesting, but sometimes most of the time they're not.
Yeah.
The spirit box that you and I had the experience with, I think a friend of ours made. Mm-hmm. And it was actually very well made, and we tested it out that night. That was the first time we ever worked together.
That was.
And
where were you guys?
We're at the Sprague Mansion in Cranston, Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. and we had just gotten done with an event, and we headed over there because we had a investigation that night, and we both didn't really know what to expect from it.
No, it was
and it was just excuse me because I have no idea what the heck I'm talking about when it comes to this, but just it sounded like just static at first.
It did, and it kind of evolved.
So
right.
When you say spirit box, though, like let's get is it meant to capture an EVP, or is it meant to be a thing that a spirit could like talk through electrically? How does it get through? Like it's auditory.
It's auditory. Yeah. It's a communication medium. I think what it is it's a communication medium. No pun intended. But it's a device where the spirit can use electrical energy to make this device create words for it. So, in other words, if Stephanie can hear whatever's out there speaking to her, that same entity or energy can use its energy to make the box do something similar, so that those of us who don't have that gift can actually hear what the spirit has to say.
It's almost like using the white noise and the energy in the room and pulling at that in order for us to hear their voice. It's very similar to how AVPs work. Only AVPs you hear, either live or afterward, depending on what type of recorder you have. But this particular, this is live. And
so if you're not a medium, then, and this, I'm interested in this too. Okay, so the message that you get through your head or sixth sense or however that happens versus the message that you get in the spirit box, like, what is there sometimes a different message, or sometimes like the spirit box message comes out and says, bad day. And then you're like, no, he meant to say, I hope you don't have a bad day. Like, so what's the, like, are there various things that come out? Does the intention usually come out through the spirit box? To the norms like me.
This particular one, was pretty accurate.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
And I'm a big skeptic, believe it or not. Yes, I talk to dead people for a living, but I don't believe in everything that comes across.
Right.
And this particular one, we were testing it out, and it wasn't saying anything. And my friends had worked with this before, and I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't gonna work. And as soon as I opened my mouth and I asked it a question, it answered me immediately. Yep. And at that point, it kind of freaked me out a little bit because I thought, all right, well, let me keep going with this. And, let everybody else ask something. Nothing happened. And then I asked again, and it would only communicate with me, which was really strange. So we covered that a little bit. But that was when you didn't really know what I could do.
Yeah, I was still trying to figure you out.
Right.
You were still strange to me.
Well, and also, I mean, to make sure, because when somebody says they talk to dead people, if you don't talk to dead people yourself, you got to take that with a little bit of like,
right.
Yeah, I mean,
you talk to dead people, huh?
What do you go to the morgue and talk to a corpse? I mean, what are you talking about here?
When I first, I didn't think it would even. I didn't even think we'd be friends because we both come from two totally opposite backgrounds.
Completely opposite.
And I just figured this is never going to work.
And that's the thing is that, well, you were already predispositioned. You already heard stories about me that I was just going to be this horrible person to try to deal with, and I am. I have my faith and I have my belief, and I hold that tightly. But I'm open to investigation and looking and learning and trying to figure out what is everybody experiencing? What is it that Steph's experiencing? And for me,
you're open minded, but you need to be
validated.
Yeah, you need the proof. And
it's just like. Of course, we talked earlier that we like history and we like going to these places. And of course, we were in San Antonio and for the Alamo City Comic Con, and so we decided that one day we were going to walk over to the Alamo, and so we cut a trail and we walked over to the Alamo together because we're both history nuts. Neither one of us have been to the Alamo. Right. We had to go, and so we're walking to the Alamo, and as we get to the sidewalk to cross the street, I step into the street. And I could immediately feel something. And that's something that I've noticed that, when I'm doing investigations, you can feel if there's something around you or something changes in the air.
Change in the air, right.
Yeah. And so I looked at Steph and I said, can you feel that?
Yeah, you should probably correct that with more of like, he stopped abruptly. I kind of ran into the back of him and he turned around and grabbed my arm like something was wrong. And I'm thinking, he ran blindly following you. You're the big guy in a city I don't know. What happened? What's wrong? Are we in danger? And he's like, do you feel that?
He's like, Davy Crockett just touched my butt.
Right.
Yes, I was scared.
So I said, of course I feel that. We're getting closer to the place is all I kept thinking is, I'm feeling the energy as we're getting closer and closer. We didn't know until we walked in and saw
there's a model in there.
Yes. There's this whole table, and it shows you what it looked like when
they battled, when they had the battle
Right.
element.
Well, and also all the ghost tours in San Antonio. First of all, I love San Antonio. What a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful city. The Riverwalk, everything, fantastic.
Oh
Right.
yeah, gorgeous.
And right now, I'm thinking about like, oh, San Antonio is probably 65 degrees.
Yeah.
But that's where the ghost tours meet up. They all meet up at the Alamo. So you have all those people, like the ghost city tours and the bus tours and everything. Like that's their meeting spot. And you got to think, even if there was no ghosts there or whatever, people are putting so much energy and thought
yes.
and everything every day for these tours. Like you're going to a place where people are hoping to have an experience every single day.
Yeah. Well, I think that the thing that the point though that we were making was that when we stepped in the street, we didn't realize that's
like
where
an
the
immediate
exterior
change.
wall was of the Alamo. That's where the battle took.
Yeah. It's like we had just stepped into, like, right in front of that wall, as if we just stepped inside of the fort area. And when we looked and it showed you, where each person was set up, and, they're basically like battle stations, really.
Yeah.
And we realized where we were standing was where a lot of
people died.
the death happened. And, we thought that was kind of weird. And we went back a second time, and it was a different vibe, but it was still a creepy vibe. We actually, those ghost tours were starting right outside the door of our hotel. So every time we would walk by them, we kind of giggle a little bit. Like, do you want to go over there and help them out a little bit?
Right. You're like, hey, we don't do freebies.
Right.
We have a few more minutes with you. So what is your most, I think, remarkable, or when you think to yourself, like, this was my favorite investigation, or this is the one that I got the most validation from yourselves when you think about your favorite investigations or favorite paranormal experiences? I'm interested to hear which they are.
That's a tough question.
There's been life-changing ones.
Okay. I think life-changing is a good start to where, what's something that happened to you where you saw something or experienced something and you're like, hey, I'm going to wake up tomorrow different because of it.
Gosh, man, that's a tough one. But I think that some of the more exciting stuff that we've done together is when we're doing like stuff for history.
Yes.
Just like we went to a large historic home here not too long ago. And as we were in the room there, we were looking at the room, looking at everything in there, and Stephanie said something to me about there's somebody standing over there. Why is there somebody, or somebody's in that room? Why is somebody in that room? And I'm like, well, I can't see them. And so then we walked around the corner, and as we walked around the corner, there was another doorway looking in that room. And I turned around and looked, and I said, oh my gosh, she's sitting in the chair. And she snapped around and looked at me, and she goes, that's where I saw what I saw. And it's like, okay, this is strange, because now we've both seen the same thing. Because you didn't tell me you saw it in the chair until we got around the corner.
Well, I didn't want to, because I didn't want to
and then
paint that picture for him. That stuff lately, stuff like that's been happening.
Happened a lot.
And I think
So
that's
you're
how-
starting to see more now instead of just having through spirit boxes or meters or things like that. Like you're getting a little bit of psychic rubbed off on you.
Yeah.
don't make it where I can't sleep at night.
Right. I had to go drop something off at my parents' house, and I brought him with me, and he was sitting in the car, and I had my back turned toward the house, and this is the house that was built in 1792, the infamous house I grew up in.
Dun, dun,
And
dun.
looking for my keys to get in, looking at him, he's like, "Oh, your dad's standing right there. He's probably waiting to help you, bring stuff in." I said, "No, he's not." And he's like, "No, he's standing right there." And I turned around, and I said, "No, he's not." And
Yeah,
at
it's the
that-
guy with the tri-corner hat,
Yeah,
Right. So I said, "No, there's nobody there." And at that point, he was like, "Oh, no, he must have just walked back in." I went. My dad was upstairs. He had never come down. So, he saw something and experienced something at the same house that I did, growing up. And that kind of bothered him a little bit.
Well, that was different. But I think probably the craziest thing that's happened so far with us working together is I turned around and I answered Steph, and she looked at me funny, and she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Well, you just said this, and I was answering you." And she says, "No, I didn't say that. I was thinking it, but I didn't say it." I'm like, No. I heard it. It was your voice, and I heard it. You asked, and I answered. And she goes, "No, I didn't say a word."
You don't want to see a Southern guy get really aggravated? Tell him.
Tell me you didn't say something you did. Like you just thought.
Yeah, like red in the face trying to explain to me how he heard it. And I said I did not say that out loud. Like I was busy working on my laptop or something. Like I was not even paying attention to him. And he turned his head around. What?
I'm like, you need to get out of my head.
Right. Well, technically you should have gotten out of mine.
I don't know who was in whose head, but I heard it was somebody's head.
So I don't know.
That's interesting though, because that's also the thing about working together.
Right.
You know, like all of a sudden you're like, well, hey, I'm working with a psychic, and like sometimes she talks to me without talking. Okay. Right? Like that comes with the territory. But that's the kind of thing where sometimes it's not the ghosts or the spirits that give the most interesting paranormal experience. It's it's the living people that you're working with that you're like, hey, you thinking about that song? Yeah, I'm thinking about that song. Or, you're thinking about a song and then somebody starts singing the chorus to it that you're standing next to that you were just getting to the chorus in your head, and you're like, stay out of there. Like, you don't want to see what's in here. Stay out.
Like really like horrible, catchy commercial, because then that'll be really
my gosh. It's horrible.
Right.
So people that want to learn more about what you guys do, first of all, if you come out to the Hawaii Paranormal Convention, hawaiiparacon.com, you can hang out with all of us in Paradise on Friday the 13th of July. But if they can't make it out to the Big Island, how are they going to see what you guys are up to?
Oh, gosh.
We got a bunch.
Yeah, we get a lot. I know you can go to my website, stephburke.com, and you can just click on events, and you'll see the full list of events of where we'll be this year. That's probably the easiest way to do that. We're both on Facebook. Mine is Work at Burke, and you are
Porter TWC or TWC Porter, actually.
Right. Yeah. TWC Porter.
Yeah. TWC Porter, and I've got a list of events on there as well.
Yep. And we're at almost 20 events together this year.
Yeah.
All over. We'll be in Philly. We'll be in Utah. We'll be in Michigan. We'll be
in the Bahamas on the Wraith Cruise.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be in the Bahamas.
Oh, are you guys coming to the Michigan Paracon in August?
Yep.
Oh, fantastic. We'll probably see it. It's Sault Ste. Marie. I went to that one for the first time last year. It really was fun.
I heard it's awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing in Sault Ste. Marie all weekend. So it's like everybody there is a weirdo. You're going to have an awesome time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Great.
It's really good.
But we'll be in Virginia. We'll be in
Virginia twice. We'll be at the Dunmora and at the Silver Thatch.
Right.
We're going to be at.
We'll be in Rhode Island.
Gosh, Fort Mifflin, Fort Adams, USS Olympia, Mount Washington.
Oh yes, Mount Washington in New Hampshire. We'll be coming up in April. We'll be in St. Augustine, Florida at some point.
So anyway, it sounds like I got to talk to your agent because whoever's booking you is kicking ass.
Yeah, John Brightman's awesome. Yeah, Bright Star Promotions. Yeah, it is awesome.
Fantastic. Well, you guys, we're going to have links to this stuff at othersidepodcast.com/179. Stephanie and Porter, I got to say thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've never been to the Lizzie Borden house, Wendy. Have you?
I have not either.
No, I'd like to go check it out sometime. And that's the thing. These places where murder, like horrible murders happen. In Iowa, in Valaska, Iowa, they have this place called the Valaska Axe Murder House. And it's a bed and breakfast you can stay over. But like Axe Murder House is, well, so is the Lizzie Borden place is a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
But Axe Murder is in like the URL.
Wow.
The website for the place. It's like, hey, come stay at the Axe Murder House.
Seems so odd to have a tragedy as part of your marketing campaign.
Right. And so Stephanie's done investigations at the Lizzie Borden house with the Kindred Spirits people. And so when I was looking into Lizzie Borden house, that made me think like, man, it is a weird thing because I've done it, like a place where people are murdered. Like, I'm like, let's go stay there. We have that kind of fascination, that morbid curiosity.
Definitely.
And we're hoping to see something from somebody where a horrible event took place there. And I don't know, just I was thinking about that. I'm like, I'd stay at the Lizzie Borden house. Hell yeah. Or I was thinking about that, like the Axe Murder house. Yeah, I'd probably stay overnight there. And so for this week's song is kind of about that morbid curiosity where you want to stay at the places where horrible things have happened. This song is called Spend the Night. I'll spend spend the night in a killer's bed. Gonna spend some time in the head. I'm here to speak to the dead, and I'll spend the night. I'll spend the night in a murder scene, hoping some rubs off on me. No, I don't get queasy, and I'll spend the night. Is it a fear I want to face? Is it the memory of the chased? Is it the blood I wanna taste? I just don't know. Is it a lust for the profane, or a dream of the insane? Well, we just can't explain, so we'll spend the night. I'll spend the night on a battlefield where the wounds never heal. We'll see what the worms reveal when I spend the night. I'll spend the night with a gallows pole in my hand, Sharon's oboe. I'll sleep in a 6-foot hole, and I'll spend the night. Is it a fear I wanna face? Is it the memory of the chased? Is it the blood I want to taste? I just don't know. Whoa, whoa. Is it a lust for the profane, or a dream of the insane? Well, we just can't explain, but we'll spend the night. So we just can't explain, and we'll spend the night. Yeah, we just can't explain, but we'll spend the night. Oh, we just can't explain, so we'll spend the night.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
We're creeping up on our first Patreon Hangout of the year, Mike. It's coming soon.
Fantastic. When are we going to do it?
I don't know. Why don't we look at the calendar and pick a date?
Okay. All right. Well, if there's any dates that work for you guys, please post it in the Patreon. You can do that othersidepodcast.com/donate goes to the Patreon. If you would like to join us, also that othersidepodcast.com/donate is where you can join up, become part of the Patreon, hang out, have paranormal conversations. We talk about movies, haunted stories, and then also the people in the Patreon suggesting topics. And it's a lot of fun. So make sure you check that out. And I got to say, speaking of spend the night, we got to spend some time with Ned, Dr. Ned, on Saturday night.
Thanks, Ned.
Yes. So Ned's at the Patreon level where he gets a shout out in every single episode, and also gets to party with the band. So
wow, what a treat.
Thank you, Dr. Ned, for all your support.
Ned.
And thanks to each and every one of our Patreons.
Yeah.
You guys make this show happen, and we absolutely appreciate it. It sounds like somebody sneezed in a box. Davy Crockett just touched my butt.